Unity is an educational movement that teaches people to remember the truth about themselves, to believe that the truth of being is a powerful force for good both within and all around us. And so we gather to impress upon our hearts the freedom we truly have to live in joy, in love, and in peace.
We light the Christ candle for the peace and the love and the happiness in our hearts. Amen.
I have the honor of introducing Reverend John Williams. When he first came, when you first came, the first Sunday you were here, I had never met you. And I'm from a long line of Unity ministers, you know, and I walked in here for the service, and the first thing he said cracked me up so much. I said, I am never going to forget that. That's the funniest thing I ever heard, but I have forgotten it. So I know there's plenty more where that came from.
I know what I said. I said, how many of you believe in reincarnation? Raise your hand. Nice to see you again.
That wasn't it. Anyway. I knew there's plenty more where that came from. So I give you, with love and joy, Reverend John.
It's nice to be here. It's nice to be together and back with a lot of people that I learned to meet and to love over the years, and it's nice to be back. So first I'm going to tell a story about Susie, my daughter. My daughter Susie, those of you who know her, used to come here to church all the time when I was here, is going to be 21 in June. It makes me feel old, not quite as old as having a 52-year-old daughter, but anyway. So here's the story. This just does not relate to the talk whatsoever. It's just a good story. Susie and I used to go to the library in Batavia, Illinois, all the time. And as you walk into the library, and there's the alcove into the library, there's a life-size statue of Mark Twain. He's sitting on a bench, he's reading Huckleberry Finn. And we go into the library. Susie's about yo-big, you know, about 4 or 5 years old. And, so into the library we would go, and I'd say hello to Mark. And she'd go, hi, Mark. And into the library we would go. And we would do this every time we went to the library. Now, as a little backdrop on this, the thing that's one of the great things about Susie is that she's a big Blackhawk fan and a big Cubs fan. I've been taking her to hockey games and baseball games since she was like 2, so, and she knows all the players and everything else. So anyway, so one day we're walking into the library, and there's the statue of Mark Twain, and there's a lady sitting next to him. And I say, Susie, say hello to Mark. She goes, hi, Mark. The lady goes, oh, do you know who that is? She says, why, yes, I do. That's Mark. The lady says, Mark who? Susie says, why, that's Mark Drudzilonic. He's the Cubs' second baseman. That's the Mark that she do. So, unless you become as a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And children think about God differently than we as adults do. And you probably all thought of God differently. I know I did when you were a child. And there's this book called Letters to God. And it's also part of an Art Linkletter thing. These kids say the darndest things. So here's some letters that young children wrote to God. Did you mean for a giraffe to look like that? Or was it an accident? Norma, your friend. Instead of letting people die and having to make new ones, why don't you just keep the ones you've got now? Jane, are boys better than girls? I know you are one, but try to be fair. You know, we in Unity don't believe that. It's a father-mother God, but, you know, traditionally, right? I took a cookie when Mom wasn't looking. Were you? I've been reading your book. I've read about the creation, the flood, and the Battle of Jericho. I can't wait to see what you'll do next, Charlie. And finally, I just love this. I think about you sometimes, even when I'm not praying. Sincerely, Elliot. I like that. It kind of ties in. So the other story I'll tell about Susie is, I got to walk around a little bit here. One day she came home from school. I think she was in first grade. And she said, Daddy, I learned about opposites today. I said, oh. She says, you can test me on the opposites. I said, all right. I said, what's the opposite of up? Down, in, out, over, under, left, right. Going along pretty good. So I said, and what's the opposite of love? And she went, Daddy, there's no opposite of love. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, God is love, right? I said, yes. And God is everywhere, right? Yeah. So there can't be an opposite of love, can there? All right. So in the Bible, the disciple asked Jesus, who gets the highest rank in God's kingdom? And Jesus called over a child and he said, I'm letting you know once and for all that unless you return to square one and start over like children, you're not even going to get a look at what the kingdom looks like. He also said, whoever becomes simple and elemental again, like this child, will rank high in the kingdom. So what is the square one that he's talking about? Well, my favorite book for doing meditations, maybe my second favorite book after reading a book yesterday with Jim Keating, it's called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and he kind of explains what I think that Jesus was talking about. And here's what he says in the January 6th reading from his book. Each person is born with an unencumbered spot, free of expectation and regret, free of ambition and embarrassment, free of fear and worry, an umbilical spot of grace where we were first touched by God. It is this spot of grace that issues peace. Psychologists call it, what do they call it? Oh, psychologists call this spot the psyche. Theologians call it the soul. Jung calls it the seat of the unconscious. Hindu masters call it Atman. Buddhists call it Dharma. Rilke calls it inwardness. Sufis call it Kalb. And Jesus calls it the center of our love. And we would call that, here in Unity, the Christ within ourselves. So square one is returning to where we started, or you could call that a return to love. The coming to consciousness, or return to love, is not a discovery of some new thing. It's a long and sometimes painful return to that which has always been. And so how do we begin to make that journey? To go back to where we started from. Knowing what we know now, we go back and try to remember what we knew then. Some of the quotes that kind of steer me in that direction are the simple one by Marianne Williamson when she says, we are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. Or Steve Jobs, who says, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. But Unity Minister Imelda Shanklin puts it, I think, one of the best ways. She said, the title of her book is called, What Are You? I'm sure it's in our library here someplace. And she says, spiritually, what are you? You are a soul that has forgotten its divine identity. A soul now struggling to remember in the midst of time and the confusion of experiences that you are the son or daughter of the living God. Identity is trying to remember in the midst of time and the confusion of experiences that you are the son or daughter of the living God. Down in St. Joe, I substitute teach all different grades. And once in a while, I'll put up on the blackboard a sentence, and it will say, I am not blank enough. I say, fill in the blank. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not short enough. I'm not blah, 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 blah enough. I said, good. I said, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to erase one of these words. Let's erase the word not. I am pretty enough. I am smart enough. I am tall enough. I I said, now we're going to erase another word. And I erased all the definitive words, and I said, now just read it. I am enough. I am enough. In the book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she says, when human beings understand their place in the universe, they will become able to grow to assume that place. But the answer is not on the words of this page. The answer is within you or within us. She says you can become a channel and source of great inner strength, but you must give up everything in order to gain everything. And this is about that letting go thing and returning to love. She says, what must you give up? All that is not truly you, all that you have chosen without choosing and valued without evaluating, accepting because of someone else's intrinsic judgment rather than your own, all your self-doubt that keeps you from trusting and loving yourself as other human beings. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not blah, 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 blah. On and on. So what do you gain if you give that up? Only your own true self, a self of peace, who is able to truly love and be loved, and who understands who and what she is meant for. But you can only be yourself if you are nobody else. You must give up their approval, whoever they are, and look to your own self with a big S for evaluation of success and failure in terms of your own level of aspiration that is consistent with your values. And the last line is, nothing is simpler and nothing is more difficult. What must we give up in order to become as a child? What must we give up in order to return to love? One of my fellow ministers, Jim Rosemary, says, for many years I have defined forgiveness as a return to love. When there is a need to forgive, it is because we have closed our hearts. We have no longer true to our true selves. We have forgotten who we are. What makes forgiveness difficult is that we focus on what the other person did or said, and this path is a circle that fails to return us to love. I like to talk about resentments and presentments. Resentment is something happened to you, and you re-sent from sentient to feel. You re-feel it again. Oh my goodness, the time that this happened, the time that I made a mistake. Oh, I remember that again. Oh, the time that I did that wrong. Oh, the time I forgot how to tie my shoes. Oh. But the presentments are my favorite. Presentment means to resent something that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Think about it. It's an old story Danny Thomas used to tell. Guy's car breaks down, goes to change the tire, doesn't have a jack. Decides, okay, there's a gas station about a half a mile up the road. I'll go borrow a jack, change my tire, I'll be on my way. Starts down the road. I wonder if he's going to charge me to borrow that jack. Well, he maybe charge me $10. That's no big deal. And he keeps walking down the road. Maybe 20. So what? It's no big deal. So he says, gets a little bit farther. He says, maybe you want $50. It's an awful lot just to borrow a jack. I could almost buy a jack for $50. Maybe 75. Maybe 90. Finally gets to the gas station, walks in, the guy's behind the counter, big smile on his face, says, hi, sir, how can I help you? For $100, you can keep your damn jack. Presentments. What's going to happen tomorrow? You know, that I'm not going to like, right? Yeah. So, resentment is feeling it over and over again, and resentment is plotting how you can get your revenge. And think again for a second here how a child looks at others. Without resentment, without judgment, without expectation, without embarrassment, without anger. You know, you meet one of these little kids, you know, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, basically 1 and 2, and you go, hi, how are you? And the little kid goes, that's an ugly sweater you got on. I don't like people from India. Where'd you get that haircut? What's the matter? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You mean you don't go to the same church I go to? No, I don't. Oh, well, I don't want to talk to you. That's not it. You know? The heart of forgiveness is not what was done to us, but what we think about the other person. Not what was done to us, but what we think about the other person. Or what we did in return for the hurt that we experienced and what we feel. What it really is about, forgiveness, is really about forgiving ourselves for the negative thoughts that we held about somebody else. You know that old saying, I'll get even with you, I'll drink the poison and you're going to die? Let me pick up these hot coals and throw them at you. Okay. So this forgiveness thing, which I think is the heart of returning the love, is really not about two people, it's about one. It's about one. The other person gave us the opportunity to discover who we really are. Once you have let go of those negative thoughts and feelings, you're on the way to return to love. Diana was talking about Palm Sunday, so I got to tell you the Palm Sunday story, and then I have something serious that I'm going to say, which is very unusual for me. So one Palm Sunday, I'm teaching the little 4-year-olds Sunday school, and I said, this is Palm Sunday, and next Sunday is Easter. Who can tell me what Easter is? And one little girl says, Reverend John, I know what Easter is. Easter is when the baby Jesus is in the manger with Mary and Joseph, and 3 nice guys bring him some presents. I said, oh, that's a really good answer, but that's actually Christmas. Well, a little boy is all excited. He goes, I know. What is it? Easter is when everybody puts a flag out. There's a big parade down Main Street, and at night we have fireworks. I said, that's called Independence Day, and that is really close to the same meaning of Easter, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Well, one little girl says, well, I know, I think I know what Easter is. I said, go ahead. Well, it's when Jesus is in the tomb. And he's been there for 3 days. Now we're getting somewhere. And there's a big rock in front of the tomb. And then there's a flash of light. And the stone is rolled away from the tomb. I said, oh, now we're getting somewhere. And Jesus comes walking out of the tomb. And if he sees his shadow, there'll be 6 more weeks of winter. Easter. I hope he doesn't see his shadow. Oh, goodness. You know, the story of Good Friday and Easter Sunday, something came to me a couple of weeks ago when I've had the opportunity to speak a couple of times at a church called Storyline down in St. Joe, Michigan, which is really very, very, very similar to Unity. And here's what I got out of a talk one Sunday. Jesus didn't die for us. Jesus didn't suffer and die for us. He suffered and died with us. He suffered and died with us. Yeah. Think about what he said, that we're all brothers, we're all sisters. I'm in you, you are in me. Yeah. I understand what you're feeling. I understand what you're feeling. I felt that way too. Yeah. Anyway. So, as I put this talk together, and yesterday, Jim and I'm over at Jim's, and we're going to have a meditation, and he says, pick out a reading. I love coincidences. Let's pick out a reading, we're going to meditate together. So, this is the book that Jim put together of Claire's messages. Right? And what are we talking about is, we are all born with that unencumbered spirit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then something happens and we're trying to get back to where we were. So it's just remarkable to me how these things happen. I've got this whole talk put together, and I pull up this reading, number 84, and it's called Dishwater. Dishwater. Each of us, as pieces of God, is whole and complete. However, having lived on the earth plane, we have forgotten who we are and have covered ourselves with pieces of unrelated items from the ego. Actually, we have many upon ourselves, so many upon ourselves, that the purity of who we are is barely visible, if at all. It is like the surprise of finding an antique silver spoon where the tarnish has made it black and uncomely. Its appearance is the opposite of what it really is. This, too, is ourselves. We have covered ourselves so completely that our brilliance, our light, has very little chance to shine. You know, it's like you buy a house and it's got these ugly rugs and you tear the rugs up off the floor and there's this beautiful oak flooring. It's always been there, but you didn't see it because of the ugly rug. So, I love this. Into the dishwasher we go. We take on lessons in our daily life that help us to remove blocks. We know we have succeeded in removing these blocks when we feel joy radiate from our being, when we look at others with joy and appreciation, when we feel like smiling. In the dishwasher with us are many other parts of God. They, like us, seek to be pure once again. Our degree of cleanliness or awakening does not, however, depend in any way on those around us. I better read that again. Our degree of cleanliness or awakening does not, however, depend in any way on those around us. They cannot keep us back, although they can, and often do, lead the way. Those around us are either leading us back to love or away from it, one or the other. Get rid of the ones who are leading you the wrong way and head out with the ones that lead you the right way. It is through our own desire to be pure again that we go into the dishwasher or the lessons of life. Every lesson is by choice. There are no accidents. We are never the innocent victims. Every situation has been set up by our own spiritual self for removing the blocks to our own brightness, our own clarity, our awareness of who we truly are. All these blocks are setting us up to return to the truth of who we are, to returning to love. Some choose to spend their lives with very little change, very little cleaning. Others will scrub and clean diligently and through struggle. Yet others will choose to learn their lessons, to brighten their souls through painless ways. This is the rarer path, however, unfortunately. As the debris and tarnish comes off of ourselves, we will radiate light and joy. But most miraculously, we will see others past their tarnish and see the bright, beautiful souls that they are. Most importantly, we will see others past the tarnish and see the bright, beautiful souls that we are. This will be a continuous joy and a connected feeling. We will start to feel the oneness of God. As we willingly go into the experience of clearing and cleaning the debris from who we really are, let us count the blessings of joy we experience and know that it will continue to increase as we awaken. How about that? And I think the most important thing about the exercise of forgiveness, of beginning to see people as they really are, as opposed to what your negative thoughts would think about others, is to cut the cord, break the chain. I once did a service back in Illinois when I first became a minister, and I said, how many of you had a happy childhood? And one person raised their hand. Don't anybody become a victim of this. Don't put your hand up. Put your hand up, and one person raised your hand. And I, being the sarcastic minister that I was at the time, and probably still am a little bit, said, oh, well, some people are still living in denial. Well, a couple of weeks later, another Sunday, a woman walks up to me and says, Pastor John, I said, what? She says, you know, a couple of weeks ago when you said, how many of you had a happy childhood? I said, yeah. And she said, well, I was the one who raised my hand. And you said, some people are still in denial. And that really made me mad because I had a happy childhood. And I went home and I was fuming. And finally, after a week, I called my sister and I said, do you know what the minister said? The minister said, who had a happy childhood? And I raised my hand. And he said, oh, some people are still in denial. And you know what my sister said? I said, no. What did she say? She said, are you sitting down? Yeah, whatever. So the trouble with this covering over the truth of where we are is it's the product of our environment, the way we were brought up. If anybody in this room never felt guilty or never felt ashamed as a child, you can get up and leave because you've got it made. But most of us did. Probably all of us did. And then that carries on, and there's no pattern for raising children, so you raise your children the way that you were raised, and blah, 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 blah. And so here's my last quotation here for this story about returning to love or becoming as a little child. If you were judged, choose understanding. If you were rejected, choose acceptance. If you were shamed, choose compassion. Be the person you needed when you were hurting. Be the person you needed when you were hurting, not the person who hurt you. I go to this meditation, 45-minute meditation at a yoga life in St. Joe. And Cheryl, my friend Cheryl, led this meditation one day. And one of the things she said, close your eyes and go back and imagine up on a stage, there's your 2-year-old self. Now go up there and sit down and talk to the 2-year-old self and tell your 2-year-old self what it needs, what he or she needs to hear. And I cried for about 10 minutes, and not because of how the 2-year-old felt hurt, but I remembered that my grandfather raised me until I was 3 because my dad was in the service, and I remembered how much he loved me. And that brought me back to my heart, to my true self, knowing that I was loved unconditionally. I mean, there's a simple way of telling whether or not you're loved unconditionally or who loves you unconditionally. It's just put your significant other and your dog in the trunk of the car and close the trunk. And come back in an hour, open the trunk, see who loves you unconditionally, who's glad to see you. Whoa, there he's back. Okay, I didn't mean to interject that. It just happened. Be the person you needed to be when you were hurting, not the person who hurt you. Vow to be better than what broke you. To heal instead of becoming bitter, so you can act from your heart and not your pain. Be the person who breaks the circle. Be the person who breaks the circle. And that's my message for you this morning is return back to love. Be the person who breaks the circle. Remember who you were, why you were sent here. The odds of anybody, one of us, being in this room are 400 trillion to 1. When I teach the kids at the high school, I say, the odds of winning the lottery are 302 million to 1. The other lottery, 298 million to 1. The odds of you being here are 400 million to 1. You're special. You're special. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. You guys are all special. I'm so nice to be back here again with you. I love you guys. Thank you.
I would like to do a statement that comes right out of your thoughts and words, John. So let us take the statement together. I am free to return to love. So let's vocalize that now as we prepare to enter the silence. I'll say it one more time and then we can say it together. I am free to return to love. Together. I am free to return to love. And let those words settle in your heart. For we come into this world truly free, to begin anew, to grow in love. And in this experience now we abide, fully present, remembering the truth about ourselves in the silence. For we are bathed in the quickening activity of spirit, made new, made whole. And so it is. Amen and amen.